In this video, we'll show you how to build a super cool website with fancy fonts and smooth transitions using Framer. Whether you're a pro designer or just starting out, this tutorial has all the tips and tricks you need to make your own website awesome. The navigation turns into a hamburger on mobile, which also has an animation when it appears. Scrolling down has a parallax scroll where the text changes as I scroll. It's almost impossible not to read it, way better than all those walls of text that nobody reads. Once all the text has appeared and the user has scrolled through the whole section, we can see the rest of the page with the portfolio. When I hover over the card, I get this animation of the cursor changing. Once clicked, it has one of the best transition animations I've ever seen on the web. To mix things up a bit, this section has a contract dark background with a slider interaction. We can click on it to see different testimonials. For the categories, it has a hover animation of pictures appearing in a way that seems like it's lagging at first, but it's just an animation that once I hover over it enough times looks really clean and smooth. To view all the works, click on the link, and here we have this beautiful page transition and in the background video playing. We can click to see other projects down here. In Framer, it's done within a slider component, so if I change the element or any detail in here, the changes will be automatically applied across all of the slides. The same goes for mobile interactions. Once I do any change here, all of it will be done for other screens as well. The best thing about Framer is its ease of use. To understand how to build this complex website with a lot of animations and interactions, first you'll need to grasp one important idea. Every website consists of boxes within boxes, within boxes, within boxes. This is how we create amazing websites in Framer that are both flexible and responsive. In Framer, these boxes are actually called frames. I'll show you how frames are used to build a website. By the way, if you're interested in learning more about Framer, I highly recommend joining my web design community. It's currently free, but I'll be making it paid soon. However, if you join now, you'll get lifetime access without paying a dime. Plus, you'll have access to courses and rewards for being active in the community, asking questions, interacting with other members, and more. Click the link below to join for free. Let's examine the Hero section of the example landing page. It looks modern and clean, but it's essentially built with various boxes and frames. If we take a closer look, you'll find a frame around that Hero section. Defining it, the navigation bar is a frame itself too. It's split into two parts, with styled elements on the right side and another set on the left side. It's like in Figma, where you group different layers focused on specific parts. For example, a button can be a frame of its own to apply unique styling. Now, consider the Framer website. Again, the entire section is framed as the Hero section. The navigation bar is another section with its own styling. Below that, there are two columns, text and button on the left, and an image on the right. If you look at this website's structure, you'll notice similarities. Within each frame, we add the styling and design elements. This structure allows the site to be flexible and responsive. For instance, if I want to make the browser very large, I can adjust the widths and heights of these frames to adapt. After adding your text, you can edit everything easily. This focus on frames is crucial to mastering Framer. When everything is within frames, you can add text, headings, images, and colors, customizing them as needed. This approach helps us build impressive websites that are adaptable and responsive. Let's look at the Framer editor. So, as you can tell, this looks pretty familiar to Figma already, but let's dive into this a little bit further. In the middle here, we have our canvas, and this is where we can put our designs. At the top here, we have the name of this canvas, and we can also add breakpoints. So if I want to have a mobile view, a tablet view, a desktop view, all of this can be accessible, and we can design it here on the freeform canvas. On the left-hand side here, we have pages, layers, and assets. Pages is where we add all our pages, so our home page, our about page, our blog page, all these will be seen in this left-hand panel here. When I select that page, the canvas in the middle will change specifically for what page I'm on. I can add things with layers here, and this is very similar to any other design program where you can change the layout positions and essentially name your layers and organize everything directly in the Layers panel here. Assets is built for any sort of global components on the website, so if you've got any code or components which we'll jump into later on, like your buttons or even global styling, such as if I'm using the same color purple over and over, I can add a purple styling, and that can be a component and an asset that I have on my website. On the right-hand side here is a bunch of different options, and we'll jump into this a little bit further on, but this is essentially where we can edit what we're editing. For example, if we just add a new frame quickly, you can see that I've got all these options to manipulate this layer and this frame. Again, we'll jump into this later on, but just be aware that this is where we edit things. In the top navigation bar is where we add things. If we want to insert something, we can click on the Insert button, and we have a bunch of presets here. There are different elements like media and forms and icons and a bunch of goodies. But we also have this Layout tab. This Layout one will be one that you will use a lot. And the majority of the time, you're going to be adding a frame. You can either click on a frame and then draw your frame like you would a box in Figma, or you can use the hotkey F on your keyboard and have the same effect. The CMS will jump into later on, and actions will be covered later as well. But for now, that's all you really need to know. The only other thing to note on this page is the top right, and that's about who's viewing the page, accessing your site settings, and previewing the site. So if I click on this preview, I'll get a live preview of what this site looks like and how it works. I can publish this site as well to the internet. Okay, so one of the key fundamentals to Framer, which often goes overlooked, is actually having a really good understanding of positioning of elements within Framer. Now, there's a few different types of positioning that we need to know, so I'm going to run you through them in this video, and hopefully they'll give you a better idea of how you can actually use them effectively within your Framer builds. The first one, which is the most common and by default, is relative. Relative essentially means that if something is set to relative, it is relative to the frame that it's in, meaning the positioning of this frame is conditioned by what the parent element decides. For example, I've actually got a layout set in this container or frame that's the parent to this actual element here. You can see everything's distributed to the center, which means no matter what, if I try to move the positioning of this element here, it's always going to come back to the center because the positioning is set to relative. Absolute is a little bit different. If I click on this element here, you'll see the type is set to absolute. This means I can move it around almost wherever I want, essentially like dragging on a freeform canvas. Think of it like you're sitting at a table and moving one specific chair. You can move that chair at the table and it's not going to affect any other elements on the table or the chairs around it. It's only affecting this element itself. Another important aspect of positioning is how it works in terms of flexibility. You can see these lines here. On this right-hand panel, you'll notice a couple of things in blue. For example, if I set all of these to none, and if I make this in the center, no matter how big I set this box here, everything's going to stay in the center. But if I set an absolute positioning and pin it to the top and to the left-hand side and add 20 pixels on top and 20 pixels on the right, that means the positioning of this absolute element here is going to be 20 pixels from the top and 20 pixels from the right. So no matter how I resize this, it's always going to stay in that spot. Fixed is something you'll often use for a navigation bar or a chatbot or something similar on your website where you always want it to show. I like to think of fixed as like a sticker on a moving train. If you're inside the train and you've got the sticker on a window, everything outside the window is moving. Imagine that as you scrolling through your website, but that sticker, from your perspective, stays in the exact same spot. So fixed works in the same way. If you have a navigation bar at the top of your website, it stays in place as you navigate. And you always want to stay on the top of the website. If I set my positioning to be fixed, then it's always going to stay at the top here no matter what. And again, we can easily set this by selecting the element that we want to be fixed, setting the type to be fixed, and similar to absolute, we can set the positioning of that element. So if I want to make it so that item is 10 pixels from the very top of the page, it's absolutely going to do that. Now, sticky is slightly different but similar to fixed, but sticky is only going to be fixed for a certain period of time. So compared to fixed, where it's fixed for the entire website, sticky, we can make it set, so it's only fixed for a certain period of time. So if I press on play, you'll notice as I scroll, you actually see this sticky bar become fixed for almost the whole journey, just for this section that I've set it out to be. So this is really cool if you want to create some sort of like cool effect on your landing page, as you kind of have content that's stuck to the site as other content sort of scrolls. So to achieve this, essentially what we need to do is select that element that we want to be sticky, set the type to be sticky, and then we can actually affect when that becomes sticky. And now it actually starts. So if I set it to be 50, that means that once the parent element that it's in reaches below 50 pixels, it's going to start to become sticky. So that is the other important thing to mention here, is that it will be sticky to the parent that it's in. So because this element here is set to sticky, that means that this column frame I have set up here is essentially going to be the ruler, or the parent, of what this sticky element does. So in a nutshell, that's here use positioning in Framer. Again, like there's a lot of sort of like use cases we can use this for, so it is just about experimenting. But it is really important you understand the differences, especially if you want to design and build something and you're not sure how. Back the website we're building. It's got all these carefully crafted interactions, eye-catching animations, and a well-built design. The typography is also beautiful. We'll need to look behind the scenes to understand how it's all put together, explore all the animations and interactive elements. It's all possible for any designer or developer. I'll add a navigation component. You don't have to build it out from scratch every time. You can take it from the Component Framer library. If you open this component, you'll see it's just a container with links and buttons all evenly distributed inside. And guess what? It's already optimized for mobile. Inside of our layout, let's add 3 containers, one for the entire site, one for the hero section, and one for the text element. I'll add the text element to the container that says established in 2015. It looks a bit too small right now, so I'll make it bigger and bold. So here's a great headline that if I preview here, we can see that it will change size based on the width of the browser. Next, I'll add a hero image. It's important to use high-quality pictures or videos in the hero section. We've seen many good ones on this website. Let's preview one more time to see how the text and image animate. If I shrink the screen, the image and text adapt because their widths are set to fill, which means they take up all the available space. Unlike fixed widths, which have a fixed width of, for example, 400 pixels. To create this animated effect, just pick any element on the website you want to animate. Then click on the plus button and select Trigger Appear. Next, choose Custom as the preset. Finally, copy the custom properties I've set up for this specific animation. The next section will have information about the studio. I'll use large font to make the text more readable and engaging to read for the site visitors. However, it currently takes up too much space, so I'll set its width to 50% of the container. This way, it'll occupy only half of the page and look great. The font I'm using throughout the site, as you've probably noticed, I also have it on almost all my YouTube thumbnails, is called Anton. By the way, it's the name of my brother. In Ukraine, it's a very common name. This font is super compact and easy to read from a distance. It doesn't take up much page width, but it still looks really big. That's why I love using it so much. For the next section, we have frequently asked questions. I'll duplicate the text I've already created and change the text. This will be the headline for this section. Then under that, there will be basically this drop-down text with an icon. We'll have few questions, so I just duplicate it a few times to populate them. I don't want them to take the full width of the page, so I select each one of them and add them into a container that will be set to only take 50% of the width. That way, they will take only half of the page and will be aligned to the center. The footer is the last part of the page. The layout is simple and easy to copy, even if you don't have much experience. Unlike the rest of the website, it's straightforward. The top part has a text headline and social links. The middle part has a call to action and an email reference. The bottom part has more technical details, like the company name and privacy policy link. That's how you can build this beautiful page. If you've made it this far, write a fire emoji in the comments and I'll accept you into the community 100%.